The mic is listening.
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 Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mic is Listening show. This is Syya. We're going to do something slightly different today because I'm coming back after a 2-week hiatus. I broke the rules that I suggest to my clients, which is always be consistent with your content, push something out there, whether you have something or not. And to be honest, priorities in life happens, and I'm fully cognizant of that. So I wasn't going to do today's show. I was actually going to just ride out another week and come back and get my life together again and catch up, as things will happen in life. But you know what? I just figured, let's just do this because quite frankly, if I don't follow my own advice, I get it. And I can understand why you might not be wanting to do something that, whatever I say, but look, it happens all the time. And I'm just kind of excited. So we're an hour later. I'm by myself. I'm doing a solo show. And so I thought, you know what? Why don't we play around a little bit with the podcasting format, live streaming format, and talk about whatever we want, but something that might be helpful for today. So I thought it would be kind of fun to talk about some stuff in the news with podcasting. So let's just go ahead and get started with, if you guys have heard about this little company called Netflix, pretty exciting. They just hired a head of podcasting, and I'm going to screw up her name, and I apologize profusely. I believe it's Najeri Eaton, who is a Apple veteran. They just recruited over to launch Netflix's vision for podcasting. Now, Netflix isn't new to the podcasting world. They actually had supplemental podcasts for their specific shows, like Stranger Things, or some popular shows that they wanted to talk about and kind of summarize. Well, I'm very curious to see what they are planning to do with what Najeri is going to bring to the table. Something tells me, guys, if you are looking to create your own podcast and getting a Netflix gig, I think that would be something extraordinarily interesting. So, very curious to hear what, these opinions on this. You've got these big players that are making huge investments into the world of podcasting, into content creation. And, as a business person, as a person looking to, help grow personal brand, business branding, etc., I can't help but think there's some great opportunities here that something like a Netflix is bringing to the table. Spotify, of course, as we know, has made huge investments and strides. And quite frankly, most of my podcasts that I produce, the ones that I'm physically on, I just prefer Spotify. Just happens to be a great thing. Now, there's also iTunes Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and other directories that push out and promote podcasting. And this is so super huge, you guys. And I know I sound excited, and I'm always excitable. I get that. But what this means, okay, with Apple, and Netflix really jumping in and pushing forward with content like this tells me, us as fellow podcast creators, it's all, what's that saying? And I say it all the time, all ships rise with the tide. And what an enormous opportunity here that we have for us as podcasters to really help each other and sponsor each other and promote each other. And this brings up to this great woman that I want to highlight today, Heather Osgood. She is the founder of True Native Media. And so, Heather, I'm giving you a shout out here. She is constantly producing live stream content, talking about the merits of podcasting, particularly in the context from an advertising perspective. So she helps brands understand the value of podcasting and the value that it brings to the table for your brand. And she posted this the other day that just really struck with me because, again, I keep saying this. I know I sound like a rambling person, but look, all ships rise with the tide. And she says, we'll all rise and sing together in the podcast industry. We should be talking about how to collaborate together instead of competing about how to gather downloads. And This was an episode that she had with Brian Barletta. I think it was a couple days ago. And we've got so much technology. We've got so much acquisitions, right? With new businesses emerging. Some are, collaborating. This is such a great opportunity for us as podcasters, for us in the industry, in the background, foreground, etc., to really work together. And one of the things that I find interesting is on the Global Leaders Organization last week, we had a gentleman named Yossi, oh my gosh, Ginsburg, who was he got lost in the Amazon, and he ended up parlaying that experience and surviving into business and personal world applications. And all these things just kind of came all together at once. So the last couple of weeks I've been unavailable, sometimes with internet access and without. And it gave me opportunity to really think about our messaging, think about the importance of podcasting. Why am I even doing this? The Mike is Listening show. I'm not necessarily broadcasting about myself and how awesome I am. It's really about our fellow podcasters. It's about highlighting others that are doing exactly what I'm doing, producing other podcasts like I'm doing. And I don't mind having them on. I don't mind sharing what they're doing, because there's just such a big world out there, big pool, niches that each and every one, which Yoshi actually said, monopolize your own ecosystem and just like max out there. It's okay to, quote, have a monopoly, but understand this broader ecosystem, like the Amazon, could not possibly exist if only one species dominated the other. There's always an equilibrium, there's a balance, and there's a support mechanism. Hey, Paul DeLagro, host of Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast, another individual where, you know what? In his industry, in his world that he's in, he's been able to parlay it and broaden it out in a way that he's bringing other folks into conversations that, again, have interesting stories to tell and share of people that he knows, but also in the tech industry, which we know is somewhat can be bland at times, or could it? I think there's some great tech podcasts out there that make it interesting. And, selfishly, I'll talk about Ransomware Battleground. It's one I host. Thank you, Eric, for the sponsorship. But the world of technology can encompass so many different facets. And so I highly encourage you, if you have a niche, if you have a podcast that you think may or may not be interesting, just understand there are over 75 million books that have been published in the course of time. And yet people are still publishing books today. So if you're thinking about a podcast, if you're a business thinking, well, how does my podcast stand out? How can I make people look and differentiate itself? Is this a medium that's worth the time and investment? I highly encourage you to talk to me, to talk to folks about this, other people, talk to anyone, please, for the love of all things. Heather Osgood, she can talk to you about the branding of it from an advertising and marketing perspective. You got to talk to those that are around. It's not just simply putting a podcast out there and slapping it up and calling it a day. I am actually getting hit up quite a few different areas in social media, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, obviously. This is my primary location, asking me, why are you doing this? What can I do? Here's my podcast. Is there something else I can do to improve it? Look, if I had the single magic button, we'd all be millionaires, right? But here's the thing that I strongly encourage you to think about. Try it once. Just try it. And if anything, you're going to leave a legacy, and this is why I'm digging into. You're going to leave a legacy that you didn't quite realize, whether it's a business professional legacy or it's even personal, where people get to know who you are, hear the nuances in your voice, hear the excitement level, or maybe if you are more stoic, the fact that every personality will resonate with different audiences. The content that you provide will resonate with different audiences. Please, I encourage you, if you've always thought about doing it, try it. You might be pleasantly surprised with the experience and, quite frankly, the audience that you develop and grow from there. So it's my little rant that I thought about. I've talked to so many people in the last couple of weeks. Do want to hit up Chicago. You guys have been so incredibly gracious for me the last couple of weeks and meeting so many of you. And it's so nice to see that, me being based in Dallas, our world has opened up, I think, faster than Chicago has. So to hear the stories of all these other business professionals that were struggling, that are, extraordinarily excited to finally get out and about, let's take that excitement level and parlay that into ways where it can help you grow your business. It may not be podcasting, guys. I get it. It could be maybe posting on social media like LinkedIn, where it matters to your business or matters to your audience or what you're trying to grow. Maybe it is you starting to write a blog, or maybe it is something where you decide to post some videos and then you just load those videos straight up into, LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever. You don't have to make a quote podcast. It doesn't have to be found on the Spotify's, iTunes of the world, etc. But if you're going to take the time to do a video, my question to you is, why not do a podcast of sorts? Call it something. Jerry Mecca, I'm going to give a shout to Jerry Mecca. He is a CTO at Datascan. He had the Mecca Minute. Literally under a minute, he talked about a concept, a business concept, tech concept, and that was it. And then you could just see a whole series of minute-long, recordings. Do what works for you. It's something that you can find passion in and have a lot of fun. So why the mic is listening, guys? I love listening to so many different podcasts. For me, listening to a podcast is like a masterclass, a free masterclass, or if you want to go behind a paywall and pay someone to hear their inputs. And if you're hosting your own podcast, think of it this way: the conversations you pull from your guests or from yourself, those nuggets of wisdom, those stories that you can identify with, share that emotional connection. I got to tell you, it is, to me, invigorating and such a wonderful way to reconnect with the world, that's out there. And if anything, as we know, the pandemic hasn't really helped us with those emotional connections as maybe we thought we could, but maybe it's teaching us to connect differently. So on that note, that's my rant to kick that off. I do want to talk about a podcast, though, that I do produce selfishly, is the DLC Drop. As you may have heard and has been a former guest, John Davidson of the DLC Drop podcast, he actually shared with me this post. And I want to share this with you because there's a big picture to this. So let me go ahead and show you this really cool thing that he had. He got published into BW Business World. Now, this is a publication in India that has over 40 million viewers on a daily basis or weekly, something to the effect of those numbers. And they had reached out to John talking about, where is the impact of esports and how does that look internationally? And India is one of the biggest markets for esports and gaming and technology, for that matter. So it was such a privilege and honor to know that John got asked to highlight his thoughts on how India fits into the world of entertainment. We've all heard of Bollywood, which, by the way, is huge. And I could see a lot of crossover potential with Bollywood and Hollywood, especially as we go international with our content. Streaming, as we all know, this is on demand. And it's not just one area monopolizing our source of entertainment. The world of esports is the fastest growing medium. Within the world of gaming, it is the fastest growing entertainment. Gaming has surpassed the traditional numbers that we look at, the areas in media. That would include Hollywood. That would include music. So think about that. When you think about all these $30 million blockbusters, gaming has already surpassed that with video games, entertainment, and then esports is taking that to the next level and creating the world of entertainment. And quite frankly, I think super cool is the fact it is international. you now have the opportunity of true engagement within esports of teams that are competing against each other from all across the globe. And so this is why I'm so passionate about sharing esports type podcasts, because it's such a cool thing. And it also resonates with business in general. If you're in an industry that is burgeoning, or maybe you're in an older industry, but you can market it in different ways, this is something that, again, consider how much fun that through John Davidson's podcast, which is on the Map Esports Podcast Network. Full disclosure, we do produce that. But because of his podcast, his 40 million audience publication from across the world reached out to John and asked him about his expertise. So imagine again how that can apply to you in your own business. So, I mean, to me, hella exciting. I think that is like one of the best examples of why podcasting is so fracking cool and why we all should look at it. So, one of the things that I do want to touch base on is podcasting in the news. So if anyone is familiar, if you are looking at producing your own podcast, there is a software. It is called Audacity. And I actually use it myself for editing audio. And so I learned on audio. That was my first, or Audacity. That was my first platform that I used to edit. More recently, I've been playing around with Audition, Adobe's Audition software. It's the same DAWs. But heads up in the news on this. For those that are using Audacity, there has been a recent update to their software privacy policy. And basically, Muse Group, who has acquired Audacity, recently announced that they are going to collect private data as you use their software and collect it in a way that if there is potential, they would forward it, for example, to law enforcement. Now, if you are a privacy person like I am, and I talk about that all the time on Ransomware Battleground, again, my background's in network security and tech, this raised a lot of red flags for me. I do not want my personal data as I'm editing my clients' audio to be sent anywhere but where it needs to belong, right? And so there was a big uproar that I think Audacity wasn't quite aware of, and they were taken aback slightly to it. So do want to give credit on July 6th, Daniel Ray, the head of strategy of Muse Group, the owner of Audacity, did try to allay concerns regarding the privacy issue. And so they said they would take that feedback from the podcast community and audio industry community and work through the privacy policy and make sure that the wording aligns with the values of the community, but also with Audacity and Muse Group's objectives. That's great and fine and dandy and all. And this is a bit of an editorial, maybe call it the Syya rant. But then in that new privacy policy, they also have a section there where the program Audacity, which is a free program, by the way, and it's open source, it was not intended for use by minors under the age of 13. Again, this is a big issue for the open source community because it does contradict requirements that GPL license on software and who can use the platform, etc. There are other implications on that because Audacity was often used in the school application. So in education, because again, free open source, education tries to go and use platforms as free as possible. There's big issues with that. So now where does education look for to produce content, to teach that next generation of audio industry professionals, how do we get them trained up? And so my 2-second personal advice is, hey, Muse Group, I loved Audacity. It was so easy to use. The fact that, I have been involved in the promotion of STEAM, education, the fact that within esports, huge advocate for the community, for the kids to embrace that there is a market and career path in esports, in technology. And part of that includes the streaming component, that includes content creation. Audacity, you fit into that segment, that section. Pulling that away and not allowing or not intending for usage in education, I implore you, please, please, please understand you are limiting and potentially causing this confusion, which is horrible for branding. And again, education needs all the help it can get. Open source enables education to help better our future generation. So that's my rant. And so, personal opinion, full disclosure of me only, and no other individuals. It is just myself, just having free reign. Love the comments. And if you would like to oppose, you want to challenge me, you want to better educate me, please do. My gut reaction on this is it could have been rolled out better, communicated better, but please don't do the excuse of, oh, whoever wrote this was an intern, so it's an intern's problem. No, whenever you put down privacy policies, I'd imagine legal ran through that, and a whole bunch of slew of eyeballs ran through it. So I would love to hear some feedback on that. You know where to hit me up. My name is Syya Yasotornrat on LinkedIn. You can always comment here, comment on the YouTube because it's live streaming right now, on Facebook, and of course, hit me up on Twitter. I am at IMSYaso. Whew, that was a lot. And like I said, I wasn't really planning on going live, but you know what? I had a lot to think about in the last couple of weeks. I'm back and I'm so excited to share more podcasts with you. So for anyone that wants to join, if you've got a podcast, hit me up. I'd love to talk to you. I want to understand what your podcast is all about. I don't care if you've got 0 viewers or if you haven't launched yet, or if you've got a bajillion viewers. That's great. I want to hear your inside stories because I believe, as Heather Osgood had posted, all ships rise with the tide. My job here is to help be a bigger megaphone, microphone, and help support you. So, thank you so much for your time, you guys. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and be nice, end up a little bit early, and wrap it up for the Mike is Listening show. I shall see ya next week back at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, and see you later. See you next week.